Don't stop.
Hi, thanks so much for joining me on the Everything and Anything in Big A podcast. I'm your host, Zach Randall Friedman. I want to tell you about my weekend because I went axe throwing. I have been talking about doing axe throwing with my friends, this group of friends I have for, I don't know, probably for a few months now. And finally, we made it happen. And I did axe throwing one time whenever I was living in Dallas, Texas. And I was on this U.S. leadership team, and they wanted to do an offsite for like 3 days. And we went way west of Dallas to this ranch or whatever. It was, yeah. So, I mean, and whenever you drive out past Dallas, I think it was past Fort Worth. Yeah, it was far out. It was like maybe 2.5 hours west of Fort Worth. Yeah, when you get out there, like, don't have a limp wrist and don't do a swishy walk, because those cowboys are like, they will hog tie you and put you on a burning cross because they're not into it. But I did actually do axe throwing at this event, and surprisingly enough, I was really good at it. Like, I was the best one there. There was a bunch of straight men there, so I don't know. I don't know why I was so good at it. Maybe it was my limp wrist that was able to throw stuff. I don't know. But I was really good at axe throwing then. I was not so good this time because I've gone to the doctor. Like in February, my right shoulder started hurting me. And I finally went like in May. And he's like, oh, you have frozen shoulder. I'm like, what the fuck is frozen shoulder? He's like, oh, it's just something that happens. It happens when you're between 40 and 60. And it's just that it could be like a hormonal change that happens, and it can last anywhere from 6 months to 36 months. I'm like, what? And then it started getting worse. He says it starts to freeze, and then it goes through a phase where it's frozen, and then it starts to thaw. So I think I've definitely gone through the freeze part. It was frozen, I think, and now it's not hurting as much. So I think I'm actually in the thaw piece. And that means I probably only will have this for hopefully a few more months. But I don't have full motion of my right shoulder yet. And so I'm like, what the hell? And then I'm like, well, what causes it? And they're like, well, we really don't know. But again, we think it could be hormonal is what it could be. But we really don't know. We don't really know how long it will last. And then they made me go to physical therapy. And I went, and the guy's like, oh, just put your hand up the wall like 20 times. So I'm running my hand up and down this wall. And I'm like, okay, what else? And then he shows me like 2 other exercises that maybe an 85-year-old would do. But I'm like, and then he gave me this printout to do these exercises at home. And he's like, oh, come back in 2 weeks. But then I got the bill. It was like $487 to see this guy for 30 minutes. I'm like, I'm not going back to see him for him to show me how to run my hand up a wall and stretch my arm over a table. Like, you gave me the exercises. I'm not paying it. I don't know why my insurance didn't. Maybe he wasn't in my network, but my insurance did not seem to cover that at all. So I said, bye, physical therapist, because I'm not coming back to you. Yep. And my shoulder's getting better, I think. I say that. But I did yard work this weekend. I was outside moving things and cutting down branches and pulling up weeds. So I was pretty active after doing axe throwing. And that's where I'm at. Getting older sucks, but that's how it goes. So let me tell you about my guest today, Kathy Anderson. She has written a book called Vamoose. Loved her. Loved the book. She's fantastic. I'm so glad I got a chance to talk with her. I'm just trying to think how I could explain. She's just like an interesting person. You can tell right away when you start talking with her that she's going to be interesting. Not everybody has that charm, because some people you got to kind of work it out of them. But I really liked her a lot. And I love it that she's written this book. It's about 2 lesbian librarians. I'm reading it from a website. Launch a life-changing friendship in the back of a pickup truck at a Texas gay pride in 1989. So and then, the book is about these two women, and I love Kathy Anderson. She was really great. So if you want to check her book out, it's kathyandersonwriter.com. I will also put a link to it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and you can probably get it wherever books are sold. So go to a local bookstore and see if they have it. If not, request it, because we need to keep these local bookstores in business. There was a local bookstore that was in the neighborhood over from me, and now they've closed because everybody's buying online. I don't even know if there's any Barnes & Nobles that are physical stores anymore, because there was one in a town over from me, and they're gone too. So let's try to keep bookstores open. So buy local bookstores instead of from Jeff Bezos and Amazon. But I'm very bad at that too. God, I get 25 Amazon packages a day, and I shouldn't be supporting it, but that's how it goes. So thanks for listening. Enjoy my interview with Kathy Anderson, and I'll be back with a new guest tomorrow. Thanks. Hi, thanks for joining me on the Everything and Anything in a Bit Gay podcast. I have a guest that and I love authors. I love authors that come on, and I love talking about like their whole writing creativity experience and how they do this. And I'm really happy to welcome Kathy Anderson to the show. Thanks for joining, Kathy.
Oh, I'm really happy to be here.
So Kathy, I want to get into your book, but first I want to learn a little bit about you. So you wrote this book. Well, first, tell us the name of the title. Let's start with the title, because then we can kind of frame this conversation around there, because I think it's a very unique title, and maybe you can kind of say that and tell my audience what it means.
Well, I have to say, with a short story collection, the title is probably the hardest thing, because there are 15 stories in the book, and each one of them is very different. So how are you going to find one or two words to, give people any idea what it's about? So I really didn't have that for a long time. I was putting the pieces together and so on. But by the time I got to the title story, finishing it, and it's just a word that one character says, not even out loud, to the other character. And so, it's settled into my consciousness. Number one, I love the word vamoose, just the sound of it. And I love it's kind of got like a motion to it, like a propulsion, like get out of here, vamoose. And it's an old kind of word. And I also really love to use like old expressions and things. And it's fun to watch language. Like sometimes those come around again. Sometimes they stay lost forever. Anyway, all that to say is I did not know for many, many, many months, probably years, as I was putting the book together, what the title would be. But when I landed on the word vamoose in that story that the character says to the other, I thought, that's just perfect, because the story is about older women, and the story is about many older lesbians, and that is the theme that kind of makes them all connected. But the other thing that connects them is that they are all on the verge of something new. And so a lot of times you have to throw something old out to get something new. So that's kind of was the impetus for calling it that. And I'm glad it's intriguing. Many people are like, what's this?
Yeah. I think it's I mean, whenever I first got the email about you, I'm like, that caught my eye. I'm like, Vamoose. Well, okay. Yeah. So can I ask about your coming out story?
Sure. I haven't thought about that for a real long time, because I came out when I was 17, and I'm 70 now. So,
you are 70?
Yes. And so I came out.
Good for you. You look amazing, first of all. So let's stop and pause there for a second.
Oh, thank you very
much. You
much.
do not look 70, so good for you.
Thank you. So when I came out, I had a very positive coming out experience. It was this late 70s, in the 80s. I mean, it was cool to be coming out then. No women wanted to get married. It was a lot of revolt against the patriarchy. And, it was absolutely, much of it was fun. My own personal family, not a problem. Not that they had any experience or education or knowledge, but they're just lovely people. So, I had a relatively uneventful coming out. Now, when it came to choosing a job, how to make a living, I knew I was a writer then. I was already writing then, but I had to have a day job, of course. So that really informed my choosing to be a librarian. at that time because the American Library Association librarians were the first professional task force of all of them: doctors, nurses, psychologists. Librarians were the very first LGBTQ, well, they called it gay and lesbian task force back then. So I saw that when I was looking around, what do I do for a bookish career? And I thought, well, these people have already laid this platform and framework and adopted it as a profession. And so that was, I was very happy in my career as a public librarian and out. You could be out. I could write, the national newsletter for the gay task force and things like that and mail it from a little tiny library, public library in South Jersey because it was my professional, stamp of approval from the American Library Association. So that, I do have, don't have anything, traumatic about that. And it also was very, it actually boosted me up in so many ways professionally. It gave me a good purpose. I think as a writer, you don't I looked at advertising, I looked at journalism, I looked at many other things. And I thought, I do not want to work for any profit-making entity. And I don't want to work anywhere that sucks the energy and life out of me. So the public library has always been my love. And I had a wonderful career there.
And we'll be right back. Okay, now back to the show. How did coming out, though, at that age, do you think it shaped the way that you wrote at all? Just because, and I also want to ask, did you grow up in Jersey?
I grew up in Wilmington, Delaware.
Okay. And so did coming out at the age of 17, when it wasn't the trend, or I guess it may have been more of a trend than I realized, but it wasn't the cool thing to do like it was, in the early 2000s or something where everybody had to say that they were, I feel like nobody was straight in the early 2000s, except maybe some of the future MAGA people. But other than that, I feel like nobody else was. So, how did that shape the way that you wrote things, or it made you think of things differently?
Well, it's a really interesting question. There was a lot of creativity around queer writers at that time. It was a zine time. Anybody and everybody was putting out cool zines. There were a lot of grassroots community media, and that was very exciting. I kind of put my foot in the water doing things like writing newsletters for the local gay task force for Philadelphia, for example. So, but in terms of shaping fiction writing, it's actually a very delicate balance because, I don't write exclusively gay characters. I really consider myself to be a literary fiction writer. And to me, what that means is that, I'm trying to reach many types of people. And I'm trying to portray many types of people. And I mean, I know it's a kind of mysterious thing, but when a character or an idea comes to me, I have to say to myself, is this person gay or is this person straight? It's the character kind of drives it. And for a long time, it wasn't real comfortable because queer publications, want queer 100% things at that time. I think now there's a lot more understanding for flexibility and, that all people can enjoy all kinds of stories. But so I have another short story collection. And I think it's more of not a real, but people might perceive it as a marketing problem. Is this a queer book or is it not? Because half of the stories are queer, half of them are not.
Yeah.
So I've always said to myself, that's not my problem. My problem is writing the stories and, making them as good as I can. And I love the feeling and I love hearing from people. This one guy wrote me from Spain and he had read my story in an international magazine. He said, I cannot believe I'm writing to you because I'm a straight middle-aged man and I just found your story of these lesbians running around Philadelphia in a dating meetup kind of situation. I found it so wonderful. I related so much. And he was relating it just as a dater and as a person trying to find love. So that's the kind of thing that makes me happy.
I love that. How long have you and your wife been together?
We've been together 4. We always have to figure this out because we can't remember. It's been about 17 years. And then we got married, when it became legal. So that's been now 11, 12 years.
And your wife, is she the first reader of your books?
Oh, yes.
And so I have a question because so I've been with my husband for 27 years, and he does not listen to my podcast. And it really bothered me at first. I'm like, why don't you listen? Like, why do you not care? He goes, I don't know. Like, I talk to you every day, all day. So, like, why do I need to listen to you talk more? And so I have a guy that kind of advises me in my podcast, and I told him about this, and he's like, it's better that he doesn't, because do you really want to hear his feedback, or do you want him to tell you things? And so when he does listen, he always has some type of feedback, or you should be doing this. Or if he has a guest that he finds or meets, he's like, you should have this person. And he won't leave me alone about it. And finally, I'm like, start your own podcast. So that was my long way of asking you, does your wife give you criticism or critique? And sometimes you're like, I don't need that. Or do you listen to what she says?
Well, first I'll start by saying she is opposite of me in every way. And that's important to this answer because she comes from IT background. She's a coder, was a coder. And so she's a very logical thinker. And she's also incredibly smart and a very good reader. So that combination is the opposite of me. Like I experience everything as a feeling. How did you feel when you got to the end?
Yeah.
She experiences it as much more just factual. So rarely gives me, so she doesn't, if she was the same as me, if she was like a very literary person or a person who enjoyed analyzing literature, that might be annoying because I know what I want to do and I have to figure it out myself. But because she comes from a totally different approach, she will sometimes say like some little point where she didn't understand something plot-wise. So I'm like, well, you know what? If her factual mind did not understand that plot point, it's not clear enough.
Yeah.
So those little things.
Okay. That I respect. But does she ever try to give you advice on building on a character or a storyline, or is she not going there?
She never goes there. She is very, the exact way you would want to be supported, like, yay, this is awesome. Yay.
Yeah.
And she's also not like real super expressive of her emotions in general. So for her to have tears in her eyes or her to laugh, which a lot of my stories are funny, like then I know I've got it right.
Yeah. Good. Awesome. So what made you finally decide to submit your manuscript? And, was that a big process to submit your first manuscript? I should say not this one, but your first one. Yeah. So tell me about that a little bit.
I'm glad you asked because it gives me a chance to say thank you to a person who was a huge influence and mentor to me. I was at a writer's conference and she was my workshop leader. And her name's Sarah Pritchard. She's an incredible writer herself. And, we got to be very close friends after that. And she became, avid reader of everything I wrote, send me more, send me everything. And she would give me real critique and feedback over the years. And so a couple of years went by after I met her and she said, put it together, you're ready. And I did not think I was. I didn't have a ton of confidence. And so she really urged me to. She said, put it together, a manuscript, I will read it, and then we'll see how it shapes up and we'll go from there. So she read it and she said, right away, this is ready to send out. And so that just was the encouragement I needed to start. But the process of getting the first short story collection published, probably typical of many people, one of the best options for a totally unknown writer to get a short story collection published is to go to a book award contest.
Okay.
Submit to those. And so I did that. And right away, I started getting semifinalist in this one, finalist in that one. So I was very encouraged. But it also went on for a long time, that level. So what it did, though, like there's two kinds of people in the world. Some people would be like, oh, sad, I'm only a finalist. Yeah. I'm the type that's like, all right, I'm so close.
Yeah.
And so I just kept dropping stories out, maybe that weren't as strong, adding new ones in, kept working on it. And then I won a contest. And that resulted in the publication of the first book.
Was there a point where you almost gave up though, where you're like, this is too much effort, or I'm not going to make it? And was there a point where you're just like, or did you just like, you always like, I'm going to keep going until this happens?
Honestly, I am the type of person that does not give up on something that they want. And it didn't really matter. Like, it mattered, but it wasn't the determining factor. Like, is this going to be published like I want it to be? The determining factor was, by then I was so hooked on like the writing life.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about being a short story writer is you can always get individual stories published if you can't get your book published. So it wasn't like I was just sitting around waiting for a book. I was still getting the stories out there.
The stories that you write are about women, reclaiming their lives and stuff. Is that is it autobiographical at all for you for these many stories?
I think there's always a piece. And I think any fiction writer would tell you that you can't write about something if it's totally an abstract to you. You have to feel it somehow. And, I am not any of these women to a big degree, but I am some part of those women. And one thing I'll say, just as a general thing, it's not really always angry women, but these are women in the book who are maybe at the stage of their lives when they're like done worrying about what everybody thinks of them. And when I wrote a lot of these, I was not there yet. And to me, old age or elder culture is still kind of very unknown to me, even though I am one. So what I'm saying is, like, I feel like sometimes you just use it as an excuse to explore. So I would see some behavior or somebody talking a certain way that I could never do. And I'd be like, how did she get there? And that's when if there's some energy around that question, then I could write that person.
So you didn't have a point in your life where you're just like, I don't care what people think, though, or I'm turning that part of myself off where I can do what I want because I'm at this certain age now? That hasn't happened to you yet?
I would say I'm getting there.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's funny, whenever I turned 50, it kind of hit me in a way where I'm just like, I don't care what people think.
Okay.
I don't want to say I don't totally care what people think, but I care less than I ever have in my life. So maybe I'm still getting there too. So.
That's a really good way to think of it, I think, now that you say that, is nothing in life is ever like, I turned that corner and now I was this. We're all going towards something, but it might take a while.
I remember hearing Oprah Winfrey, whenever she turned in her 40s, she's like, oh, turning 40s is amazing because you really don't care. And then I remember she turned in her 50s. She's like, you really don't care in your 50s. And now I'm hearing that, in 60s, you really don't care. So, I mean, I'm not looking forward to getting older, but I do look forward to having that feeling like Oprah had one day where I'm just like, I don't really care what anybody thinks. I'm going to do whatever I want.
It's quite freeing.
Yes, totally. And we'll be right back. Okay, and now back to the show. So several of your stories in the book kind of end with have endings or loss in them. Yet, they're funny in a way as well. So how do you kind of hold that darkness and the humor in the same story or in the same hand?
I think over time, I have come to realize that the humor is what helps you get through the loss. Mm-hmm. So it has to be there for me. And it's probably like a situation in real life. We've all been to funerals that turn into a laugh fest for 5 minutes because something funny happens. And it's such a relief. So I think humor is just incredibly important to me as a person. And I find I hold a very high value in reading fiction and reading books and stories if they use that approach, as opposed to, I have a hard time and do not enjoy a very intellectual approach, reasoning things out, or a cold approach. I like to see messiness on the page, and I don't think you can get to a big cathartic ending without a lot of, laughing and crying, I'll say.
Yeah. Out of your 15 stories in this book, was there one that, well, two questions. Is there one that you love more than the other? And was there one that surprised you the most?
I believe that analogy that your stories are like your children, you can't love one more than the other, but you love them for different things,
Yeah.
And maybe for me, the ones I love the most are the ones that were the most hard fought to get to.
Okay.
Like some stories in that book have taken me, I would say I know one for sure took over 10 years. So I started it, put it down, picked it up every so often. And if you work on something for 10 years because you feel there's something there, when it finally happens, you really love it. So the one that surprised me is a story that I thought I was done with. And then my editor, who is amazing at Vine Leaves Press, her name is Amy McCracken, she gently questioned me about the ending. And I, of course, you resist initially, like, what? But I was very surprised when I let myself go there. The ending changed quite a bit, and it was a vast improvement from what was there. So that really, it's a surprise that you can always make things better.
Yeah. So older lesbians sometimes in mainstream stories are sometimes not visible as they should be, maybe in fiction. So what does it mean for you to kind of put those characters in that center stage and put them out there? What does that mean to you?
Well, I'm really thrilled and proud of the stories. And I think in part it's personally useful for me because, again, I'm heading into a territory that I don't know. The older you get, you just keep learning as you go along. And I think one thing that was important to me with the older lesbians is that they were full people. It wasn't just about one part of their lives, and it wasn't just about, that they're very complex, like real people are. So I tried hard to, just honor who I thought they were. I mean, it's really interesting how stories start and take hold in you. I live in Philly, and I am happily carless, so I take a lot of public transportation. And, every so often you see something that just sparks an idea. I don't know a thing about the person. I don't know a thing about their lives, but and you see such a variety of people.
Yeah.
So one of the stories is about a working class butch lesbian 50 years after her first love disappeared. She sees her on the street. So like that whole story came out of that experience of like looking at people on a bus and like knowing there's a story there. I don't know what the story was. I made it all up, but it felt, but I like that. Again, I'm exploring a territory I don't really know sometimes.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, I want to say like what happens a lot with fiction about older lesbians and older women in general is there's a lot of emphasis on the dire, the depressed, the divorced, and what I love is when it works, that a story, it doesn't ignore that that's part of those lives sometimes, but it also shows a lot of the pleasures of that individual person's life. And there's funny twists to how she lives her everyday life.
Yeah.
So it doesn't like land. I don't want to read a story where you land and you're depressed at the end and thinking, can't you do better than that?
Yeah. So I'm thinking about the Texas Pride Parade in 1989. So how do these like historical, like queer events kind of shape some of your present day writing? Can you talk about that a little?
That's a big one. It's always, when you look back, you're always saying, has anything changed? Or has everything changed? And there's no one answer to that. But I feel that looking back, the history is so fascinating. And also, when I look back, because it was a personal experience, I can remember things maybe we don't see in writing, such as the jubilation of it, the fun of it. It's not all serious. And so in that story, for example, it opens up with a bunch of leather guys dancing a two-step at the Dallas Gay Pride in a rodeo ring, which to me, I saw that, by the way, in real life. So it's like these little snippets bring back things beyond just the facts, that there was a Texas Gay Pride in 1989. So I think probably like with anything, you have to look at all sides of it. And I don't know if it's better or worse, when you look at what's happening today. I think it's really cool, though, that a lot of young people are kind of eager and hungry for knowing that we lived through those times.
Yep.
And we celebrated while we lived through those times, and we found each other and all of that. Maybe that's what they still feel like today. I hope it's better, but I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just, it's so different now, because if you think about, like, whenever I was in junior high and high school, coming out as gay was like not happen. It was just like not even part of what you could do at all. I grew up in Miami area, and there was no one that you knew that was gay in junior high or high school. It just like wasn't there. And transgender was not. I don't think people even knew what transgender meant at that point. It was, there was all these other names that are inappropriate today that people would probably call somebody that would, I don't know, they'd call them cross-dressers or whatever they would say, that because they were just so uneducated, and it wasn't part of the mainstream, I guess, in a way. And I think it's just really remarkable today that, because I talked to so many people on this podcast too that have come out in junior high, or they came out in high school. They have children that are coming out at these early age and stuff. And it gives me a lot of hope in a way. But then, kind of like what you were saying, like, where are we at today in this country and this world even? And it's, I kind of go back and forth where are we actually at in this time in history? And what will, in 20 years when we look back, like, what will we be known for at that point? So it's an interesting time we're in, I think. And I do think that a lot of people that are younger in the LGBTQ plus world do appreciate like all the things that we had, like people even before us had to do about, same-sex marriage.
Mm-hmm.
That was something that I never thought would be possible in the early 2000s. Like, I just thought it would never happen. Or when I was in college in the 90s, like I never dreamed of having same-sex marriage. And the fact that we have it, and the fact that they are, there's talks about not having it anymore and taking it away, is just disturbing, though. I'm not even sure where I'm going with this. I'm just kind of talking about just, I think a lot of people that are younger do appreciate all the things that we had to go through, but I also think that they forget like the whole AIDS crisis in the 90s and stuff. Like, now they have all these medications and stuff that people can take to prevent getting HIV or AIDS. So I think that those are the things I think that the generations today like don't realize how difficult it was in a lot of ways. So,
well, as you're saying the word difficult, one thing that I'm really conscious of lately is that gay kids can find so many books and movies and resources and get them no matter where they are.
Yeah.
They don't have to walk into a public library and beg somebody to get a book for them, or their school library or whatever. So that is one thing is amazingly changed, is just the internet giving so much hope to people, even if it's privately behind closed doors. There's still, you need something to go on going forward. Like, I think that was really important to me coming up, was to find like the stories and the role models that I could relate to that offered you some hope. There was a long time period in history when lesbian novels had to end with somebody dead or marrying a man. So when the late 70s started and, that went away and you had real women's lives on the page, that was huge.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Okay, and now back to the show. There is a person that I interviewed. His name is Jake, and he is he's been collecting books for years, and he lives actually in New York, but he's opening a library in Boston. It's called the QT Library, for Queer Transgender Library. And it's going to be like more like a community center in a way, because there's no alcohol, there's no anything like that, because they want kids to be able to come there,
right,
and youth. And they and he's doing an amazing thing, because he's opening a space where you can have events there, but it's going to have thousands of books for young people, for adults, for transgender, gay, lesbian, bisexual, anybody that wants to come there can can allies. I mean, he wants to open the space so it's like a safe space for people to come and meet other people and not feel like they have to go to a bar or meet on an app or whatever. They can come and like come to this place and feel they can be their authentic self. So I kind of love that because it's around a library and it's around education and reading and stuff. So I love the idea that he came up with, and he's making it happen.
It's an amazing thing to do with your time on Earth. So salute him for sure. And you're making me think of something else. I don't know if you've heard of this. It's fairly new. It's called the Queer Liberation Library.
No, tell me about it.
There's a library app that every library in the country has. It's called Libby, Libby. Through that, you can link to Queer Liberation Library and get access to hundreds and hundreds of ebooks and audiobooks. You do not have to even have a library card. So they're, and it covers all kinds of literature for all kind of ages. So you picture this kid out in the middle of wherever. Yeah. They can look like they're reading a library book from Libby, but they've switched over to QLL and they can have for free. There's no charge, no nothing. It's great.
I will put that link in the description of this podcast or video just so people know about that. Because if you think about all the book bans and stuff that are happening now, which is insane, which I still can't believe that we're in 2026 and we're banning books still. I mean, that's a great resource for people to go out and get these books another way. So
it is. And I should say I'm not affiliated with them officially, but my books are in that library, which I'm thrilled about.
Yeah. So you published your first book after 60.
Mm-hmm.
Is it because you were working and or you weren't why did it take so long to publish?
It's a great question. I actually was publishing individual stories all, through the years leading up to 60. So I had the pieces and I had even a mentor, and I had a lot of, a lot of support from getting fellowships and things like that. But, I think that it takes a long, long time to really perfect your writing skills. And maybe that's something useful for people listening who want to be writers and feel like, I wrote this over 6 times and it's not good enough and nothing's happening. For my experience, and maybe there's some fast writers out there way faster than me, but it takes a really long time to get in a short story. So much has to happen in 10 pages, 13 pages, or even shorter. And so it takes just a lot of skill to learn how to do that kind of writing. So that was my particular journey, was that it took me a long time to learn to get to this level. And then I do think that I gained confidence as I went along, but it took a long time. I'm slow in that area too. I'm like slow and steady wins the race. Yeah. So then my second book came about much more quickly. And that was because, again, I had worked on it for years, off and on, until I finally got it to the place and started submitting it. So that was it was actually a novel, and that's been a fun experience to have out in the world. And then this one, basically, I had a lot of the pieces of it, but for a short story collection, you can't just put like random stories together and have it be an enjoyable experience. It has to have something tying it together. Yeah. And it has to have some kind of a momentum, like we open here and we end here. So it took me a while to get there.
Yeah. For young queer women that will pick up your book and read it, what would you like to have them walk away feeling?
That's a great question. I really hope they get a sense of the joy of a lot of these stories and they laugh, for one thing. For me, it's very important at the end of a story to feel something big. I also really think all of the stories have some hopeful component. They might not end happily in the standard sense, but it's important to everyone to feel hope. And so I'm not a cynical writer. I'm a person who will keep working at a situation until I can kind of see my way to something that is a realistic glimmer of hope for this character or this situation.
Amazing. Are all your books available on Amazon, or where could people get them?
They're available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Bookshop is my preferred online bookseller because they give a lot of their proceeds to indie bookstores.
Okay.
And also this latest book, I have to say real quick, Vine Leaves Press is an international independent publisher owned by 2 women, and they are doing an amazing job.
Awesome.
And they have an online shop. So you can bypass that altogether and go right to the publisher.
I will put a link directly to the publisher in the description of this podcast
Cool.
for you to get. So thank you so much. Again, Kathy's book is Vamoose. Great name. I don't think anybody will forget that one. So check it out. You can, again, buy it. Go to the description of this podcast and go check it out and come back and leave a comment and tell us what you think about the book. So thanks so much for being on, Kathy. It was great to have you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Zach. Bye-bye.